Have you ever wished you could just answer when an idiot tries to call you in the middle of a boss fight? Or maybe you just have a problem with recurring lag spikes, power outages, obligation of doing chin-ups every 10 minutes, too much wine, too much urine. You get the picture.
Well, suffer no more. In this video, we will show you how to make it possible to survive almost anything that the game has to offer while being AFK.
Basic theory.
Alright, let's start by talking a little bit about the basics of this build. So, what is Mjolner build? Well, Mjolner is a unique mace that allows you to activate all socketed spells in it whenever hitting monsters with melee attacks. Now, this doesn't happen all the time. There's a certain probability that it will, and it's called proc chance.
People usually use this weapon with attacks that hit the monsters as many times as possible to increase the number of procs. One of the most common spells that is used with Mjolner is Discharge. This is a spell that consumes charges on activation.
So, where do we get charges from? Well, we use a unique item called Ramiro's Banquet. It's a ring that gives us 1 power charge on every non-critical hit. So this will generate power charges, but we don't really use power charges, we use endurance charges if you remember from the last video. So how do we get that?
To get the endurance charges your discharge needs, you want to use a unique item called Vaal's Devotion. It basically gives you endurance charges whenever power charges are consumed.
So by activating discharge when we have power charges, we automatically gain endurance charges this way. But this still really doesn't explain how we go AFK, so let me get into that. By using a unique chest plate, King's Guard, we automatically gain 100 life per endurance charge that we consume. So we can just make discharge go off automatically, then we can get healed doing nothing, being AFK.
Discharge can go off automatically by using trigger gems, which will be covered in the gem section of this video. The more endurance charges we spend, the more life we gain through this mechanism. Therefore, we need to maximize our number of endurance charges and make it easier to get them. Luckily for us, GGG gave us Juggernaut.
Or more specifically this node, Unrelenting. Now this sweet apple pie of a node gives us full endurance charges every time we gain endurance charges. So we don't need to climb the ladder one step at a time, we can just skip to the top instantly. And as if that wouldn't be enough, our sweet Juggernaut also gives us 1 additional maximum endurance charge, with the Ascendancy node Unflinching. And the rest of the tree is, let's move on.
Gear. More than using the must-have uniques we've already spoken about, as Mjolner, Ramiro's Banquet, Vaal's Devotion, we should also look at the rest of my gear. What we generally look for is life and enough stats as strength, intelligence and dexterity to cover stat-hungry items and gems. Mjolner, for example, requires 412 strength and 300 intelligence. This is very demanding. This needs to be covered by our passive tree and gear combined. If we start looking at our ring, you can see that it has a high amount of intelligence, it has a good amount of life, and it also has dual resistance. These are a very nice feature to have in your ring. Now, if I look at my gloves, they also have a high amount of intelligence, and together with my ring and the skill tree, it's enough to cover the intelligence requirements of Mjolner. Also, the gloves have a high amount of life and really good dual resists. As a helmet, I've chosen Devoto's Devotion, mainly for its offense capabilities. It gives you both movement speed and attack speed. It also gives you 65 dexterity. When it comes to our belt, we want the extra endurance charge corruption on it. On top of that, we would like as much life as possible and also as much resistance as possible. My boots have great life, maximum movement speed and triple resists. As a shield, I've chosen to use Vahal's frame. This is partly because it gives 5 to all maximum elemental resistances, but also it gives a very nice amount of spell block. And together with a block flask, you can actually reach 75% spell block. That is, with a legacy Vahal's frame. The spell damage on the shield is also a very nice addition. Now lastly, I want to talk about jewels, as they can both help us with offense and defense. What we want on these are mods like increased damage, increased spell damage when holding a shield, increased fire damage, or increased area damage. Then you can have increased resists if you need that, or increased intelligence, strength or dexterity, and if you want more life, you can get increased life, of course. Skalahelatry. Alright, so here is the skill tree to my build. I've chosen the class Marauder for the build with Ascendancy class Juggernaut. And as we've spoken about earlier, Juggernaut is chosen mainly because of the node Unrelenting, as it gives us full endurance charges every time we get endurance charges. And since I don't use Resolute Technique, Undeniable here is very good, as it gives us a lot of accuracy. Unyielding is the least nice of them all, but gives us both defense and offense. Unstoppable would be an alternative if you would want movement speed. Now I want to start by telling you that I've mostly invested in offense in my tree, which means that the build can get a much greater life pool and defense than my version. What you need to keep in mind is that I can AFK almost anything the game has to offer anyways. Now, we generally want to balance damage and life in our tree, as well as getting enough strength, dexterity and intelligence to use the items and gems we want to use. First off, I've chosen damage. Fire damage in the Marauder area, spell damage in the Templar area. Here we can also find elemental damage and area damage. You get the picture. Damage. I love it, and so should you. This isn't enough though, which is the reason I've also taken 5 jewel slots. Here you can put, as you've guessed by now, damage jewels. Now I still don't quite find this enough, so I also took Elemental Overload, which gives, hardly surprising by now, damage. When it comes to life, I've taken a lot, 222%. If this isn't enough, you can get more. The 5 jewel slots I spoke about earlier, well, you can put life in those as well. Worth to mention is that most of our life comes from the node Blood Magic, a whopping 35%, so it's a very nice node. Now, when it comes to our stats, we have 402 strength from the tree, which with Vaal's Devotion's 24 strength covers our Mjolner strength requirements. Now we only have 194 int from a tree, plus 24 int from Vaal's Devotion, which means the rest of our gear needs to cover the missing 82 int, and this is very achievable.
Gems. As we talked about earlier, the things that enables us to automatically trigger discharge and heal ourselves are for some very strange reason called trigger gems.
There are mainly 2 types of trigger gems that we use. Those that trigger spells when you take damage, and those that activate a melee attack when you get hit or block.
Our first trigger gem setup is used with a level 1 cast when damage taken. Upon activation, it will trigger all the gems that are linked to it. Now the order in which you place these gems is really important, because it will determine in what order they are activated. In our case, we'll use Immortal Call, followed by Blade Vortex, followed by Discharge. So why this specific order? Well, we want to prioritize our Immortal Call because it makes us immune to physical damage for 4 whole seconds, as well as healing us because it spends endurance charges. Immortal Call is followed up by Blade Vortex, which is simply there to generate charges for us. If we deal a non-critical strike, we'll gain power charges. If we deal a critical strike, we'll spend our power charges and instead gain endurance charges. The final link, Discharge, is simply there to heal us, as it spends endurance charges. In the second trigger gem setup, we use Riposte, Reckoning, and Vengeance.
All these trigger gems make you hit the enemy with your weapon whenever you get hit, like it is with Vengeance, or when you actually block with Riposte and Reckoning.
As you use Mjolner as your weapon, when you hit the enemy, it will have a chance to trigger all the gems in it, like for example, 3 discharges, healing you all at the same time.
To activate Riposte and Reckoning, we need to block. As mentioned in the gear part earlier, Zaphal's Frame is an excellent choice for spell block. Important note is that we don't need to have these 3 gems linked together, nor in the same item. You can actually place them anywhere you want.
When it comes to the offense in this build, you have different options to choose from depending on your player style. Now, worth to mention is that the offense will be in your chest plate, and it doesn't need to be 6 linked, nor 5 linked, nor 4 linked, not even 3 or 2 linked. It just needs to have 1 socket. Easy, right? The reason why Molten Strike is so popular is because it triggers discharge so often, so the damage output is very high. Now, the only downside to Molten Strike is that there's a delay before the cores hit the target.
So Cyclone is probably my favorite gem when it comes to the offense of this build. This is because it activates instantly, and you also move when you use it, so you don't take many hits from the enemies. And also it does pretty good damage. Shield Charge is a really good movement skill, and it also does some heavy damage, as you can one-shot entire packs and kill rares in one hit.
You can use Shield Charge either as a movement skill, in which case it only needs to be 2 linked, or as your main damage setup, in your chest plate for example.
Okay, so now we've come to the quality of life gems or utility gems, and I've placed these in my boots, and for this they need to be 2 green and 2 red. The upside of this is that you can toggle between a lot of gems without changing the actual colors of your boots.
The first utility setup we're going to talk about is Vaal Lightning Strike. It's a perfect AFK gem because it auto-attacks the selected target for 15 whole seconds. What's more, you got 3 charges. Now, keeping this up, you can go 45 whole seconds of auto-attacking, which is insane. Now, Vaal Lightning Strike actually only needs to be 3 linked. So as the 4th gem, you can use Cyclone for single target damage, and that pairs really well with Shield Charge as your main damage setup. The second utility setups are going to use both Shield Charge and Vaal Haste, which are excellent movement skills and they synergize really well. Now you can pair these either with Cyclone or Molten Strike as your main damage setup. Now the third and final utility setup is very similar to the second setup. Basically, the only difference is that we use Shield Charge as our main skill and Cyclone as our utility skill. Worth to mention is that you can also use Molten Strike as your main damage setup, since Vaal Haste also boosts attack speed, so it synergizes really well.
Advanced theory, yeah!
Please tell me it isn't gonna involve math.
Of course it is. The cast 1 damage taken setup will give you 900 life on every hit taken, with 528 damage or more, as either your Immortal Call or Discharge will spend 9 endurance charges. Sadly, cast 1 damage taken has a cooldown of 0.25 seconds. This means that you can maximally heal 3600 life per second with this particular setup. An important note is that the amount healed by this setup is not affected by if you have a Legacy Mjolner or not. As a matter of fact, it's not dependent on the Mjolner at all. Vengeance is an AoE melee trigger that with 20% quality has a 40% chance to activate when hit, with a cooldown of 1.2 seconds. With this formula we can calculate the maximum heal per second per target.
So basically, the more targets there are around you, the more life you get.
Yeah, And the amount healed is also affected by whether you have a legacy Mjolner or a non-legacy Mjolner.
But both work really well.
Reckoning is also an AoE melee trigger. It has a 100% chance to activate on block with a cooldown of 0.4 seconds.
So this allows us to heal in between the hits.
Correct. Also, when using the same formula as with Vengeance, we can see that the maximum amount healed is much greater than with Vengeance. But it's highly dependent on how much block you have. In our case, we have 29% spell block without flask and 75% with. But we have no attack block at all whatsoever. But in the end of the video, we will show that with the right setup, your block can go much higher. Lastly, Riposte has a 100% chance to activate on block with a cooldown of 0.8 seconds. Sadly, this is not an AoE skill and can therefore only hit one target.
So unlike with Vengeance and Reckoning, size doesn't matter. When it comes to packs, of course.
When using the formula, you can also see that the maximum healing with one target is in between Riposte and Vengeance. With all the AFK setups together, you can reach up to 10k heal per second. So why go Resolute Technique? Yeah, this node ensures that you can never crit, which means that you will never lose power charges because of the downside of Mjolner's Banquet. This is important because if we lose our power charges, our next discharge will not create endurance charges. Which means that the next Immortal Call might activate for only 0.4 seconds, making us take physical damage for another 2.6 seconds, till the cooldown of Immortal Call is over and the skill can activate once again. The downside of never critting is losing the 40% more damage that Elemental Overload gives you. But it's worth it if you want to go full AFK. As an example, we will show you some raw footage which we didn't show in our montage video against double tier 15 boss Daresso. In this fight I died due to running out of endurance charges and therefore being without Immortal Call. This wouldn't have happened if I would have chosen Resolute Technique. By maximizing block, our melee triggers can heal us a lot more. We can also mitigate a lot more of the damage we usually take. One Mjolner build that maximizes block is Aim Deep Mjolner Discharge build. His build maximizes block by using 7 Reckless Defense Jewels, which gives an enormous block boost, but with a downside of an increased chance of receiving critical strikes. This is countered by having Enfeeble Curse with Blasphemy and a node with reduced extra damage from critical strikes in the skill tree. I've taken his or her tree and changed it a bit for Resolute Technique node and with some less damage. The tree can be found in the description. Let's explore how far we can go with the following clips.
we've finally reached the end of this video. But before we finish, I just want to say that if you have any suggestions regarding the video or the build itself, then feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to discuss with you. Also, don't forget to show your support by giving this video a like and subscribing to keep up with future videos. And with that, I'll leave you guys. Have a good one.
Until next time, fellas.